Why hello, one and all. Welcome to Nexus at Night's channel. I'm Atlas. That's the Donaldson painting. And today we're going to be doing a Blangdmire deck profile. You might have seen me play it on stream with a couple proxies against Root Beer, and I sucked at it because, I'll be honest, I was new at it. Then I took it to locals and did alright with it, so that's pretty dope. And I thought I'd share the profile with you because while the deck itself isn't super different, it's got a very rigid setup at the moment. I think there's more room for flexibility in the future, so let's get into it. So starting off here, the deck log for this will be in the description if you want to go see it. If you just came here for the deck list, that's fine. Just leave a like or something before you leave, please. Thank you. Cool, that's nice. Awesome. All right, so looking at the deck here, you may notice that as part of the ride line, I am not running the Blangdmire stuff. And the reason for that is there are games where you can just whiff. The effects are like when they're ridden upon by the next thing, you check top 3, put any grade 1 or higher cards in there, and then if you put 2 or more, draw a card. And that's fine, you can get like a lot of great soul charging that way. But also you can A, just whiff completely, which would suck, and B, you could put like PGs or stuff in there, and yes, this also is a random soul charge, but that's only once, not multiple times. So if you may remember from the Bruce ride line, Steve, when he's ridden upon, you call your starter behind him, and then soul charge 1. So that's 2 cards in soul for Blangdmire, and you're like, okay, that's not bad. Steve himself is the 3rd one, and your grade 2 is the 4th one. There's your first bind 4. You didn't even have to do anything, so yeah, big fan. And then Richard, when you ride on top of Steve, pulls the mat back in, and then you draw 1. So if you do that, combined with your energy cyclers, I think that's what people are calling these, you can draw a lot of cards very early. I only have this as a 2 of, for multiple reasons. 1, it's expensive. I don't think it's worth it to run 3 or 4, not just for the price, like yeah, it's a pain in the ass to go get more of these, but also you need the energy specifically for Zamud, which is the grade 2 that gives Blangdmire a lot of its pressure. So this is fine as a 2 of. I've seen decks without any and they seem to work fine, so that's all well and good. Speaking of Zamud, there's the Zamud. So when you play him, you counterblast if you have a grade 3 or greater with Blangdmire. Check or reveal top 3. You can put any number of cards in there. If you put 1 or more, draw 1. You want to get at least 1. And the good thing is it lets you choose. So you can be like, oh, there's a PG and 2 triggers. I'm just going to put all that back. The other effect is when he attacks, if you have a Blangdmire, Energy Blast 3, he gets 5k and a crit for the battle. That is fantastic, where you can have this being putting on pressure from your grade 3 turn onward and while going first. So yeah, this is a definite 4 of. Blangdmire himself, I guess I should go over. So his effect is when he attacks a Vanguard, you bind 2 or more up to 4 cards from your soul face down and you may draw. If you bound 4 or more cards, your opponent chooses 2 of their rear guards, bind them face down, and then Blangdmire himself here gets 5k for every 2 cards in your bind zone. So over the course of the game, if you're binding 4 from soul, which you should be every turn and is very, very possible in this deck, you just get bigger and bigger and bigger until it's time to pop the divine skill, which is at the guard step of the battle that he's attacking if you have 8 or more face down cards. So this is only possible from your 2nd attack onward, which is fine. The deck has enough draw power to not die before then. You can have him get a crit until end of turn. If you do, your opponent can't play sentinels from hand, so no perfect guards for the opponent. So that means if you have 8 cards face down, so that's for every 2. Okay, so he'll be at 33 on his own if you pop this on your 2nd Vanguard attack. Or 2nd time you do the first skill, if you pop the divine skill then, the very first time you're able to do it, he'll be hitting for 33 on his own, which is a big deal. And no sentinels with a crit, also and also you delete the opponent's Vanguard of skill. They still have Persona Ride, but they can't do any skills that do stuff. This can obviously be gotten around by Lyons, but Leal isn't too much of a problem to begin with, so that's fine. My biggest problem as a player, and this is more of a character thing and not what's wrong with the deck, is I have a problem with using divine skills in general, where I'm of the type where I want to conserve that. Where I'm like, oh god. I'm like the guy who, when they play an RPG, they never want to use any potions or ethers or anything, because you're like, what if I need it for later? And it's like, well, you're in the game, you gotta do something. So yeah, I think typically of the people that I played, otherwise, it's really just better to try and pop it as soon as you can, because you can just straight murk them pretty fast, especially if you're going first. So, big fan there. You run 4 of the Colossus here because he can just be big and then go into Soul after, meaning you can attack with him first before the Vanguard, and then that can help set up your bind account. Or the other effect is when it's put into Soul by your card's ability, if you have a Blangdmire, you can bind this face down and draw one. That said, that doesn't have to be by his own ability, that can be by other stuff. For example, Miss Valkratia here. So when she attacks a grade 3 or greater, you can put something from drop into Soul. She gets 5k for each grade. So if you put a grade 3 into Soul, that's plus 15, which you can then bind with Colossus's effect and draw. And that's pretty cool. So like if you discard them for Ride Line or for Perfect Guards, they get retired, whatever. Soul Blasted for whatever reason, that's probably not going to happen. But all of those things can then be like leveraged by Valkratia. It's kind of neat. I have a couple of these, mostly just for soul charging. I haven't used the second effect ever, like literally ever, but it's there if you need it. For Evoke Alchemist, this is the way you stand rear guards, and I think that's one big weakness of the deck, is that you cannot make 4 attacks without this thing, meaning that if you do not draw it, you do not get 4 attacks, which is very easy for a lot of decks to deal with nowadays. I get the feeling that this, like right now, if I'm being brutally honest, I think the deck just needs like that little bit more spice to it to really get there. It isn't as bad as, like, if anyone remembers the Silhouette Van video, it wasn't that bad, but it's still kind of right now. So when he's boosting, he's 13k if you have a Blangdmire Vanguard. That also applies if he's boosting a rear guard, by the way. So something to note. The other thing is that if he is boosting Blangdmire the Vanguard, he gets another 2k, meaning that it goes from 26 to 28, meaning numbers, yay. That's going to happen regardless. And then if you have 4 or more face-down cards in your bind, Counterblast, stand something, and then if it has 8 or more, it gets 15k till end of turn. So you're supposed to do this on the Zamood. So you go Zamood for a little bit, stand it again, Zamood for a lot with a crit, and if you're doing the Divine skill, that's hopefully death. So yeah, definite 4 of. Have this in there both to get soul and to kind of capitalize on the Divine skill, where it makes the opponent have to discard before writing, which in a game like, or in a format like Overdress where there's overall less cards, that can count for something. A lot of people play Brainwash Swirler in this slot. I'm not using it, A, because it's expensive, and B, running into other Blangdmire players at locals, they said that you don't soul charge enough, like, by the time Brainwash Swirler's on board for it to matter, and it's just kind of sitting there getting like 10, maybe. So I think I would rather have this just for the utility pretty much any other time of the game. There's this too, Gundarum. So Gundarum gets a soul charge no matter when you play it, so you can, if you want to be rushing early, call soul charge, swing with it, and then move it to the back for later. If the game turns into a grind game and you just end up putting stuff in soul for no reason, you can use that second skill, although it almost never comes into play. There's the 3 PGs and your Sanctitude, that's going to be there regardless. This one is a bit of a sticking point. So, if you decide to, there's nothing wrong with running the Dark States one. Having a constant crit on your Vanguard all the time is a lot of pressure, especially if you get it early. But I think, once again, being honest with myself, I would be using the blue overtrigger that gets the thing from drop back to hand and also gives a crit to something. So that way you can reuse spent Zamoog or get a Tiz card back for another draw. Or, you know, if they blew up your Evoke Alchemist because they're smart. Whatever. I think that is probably the more prudent option, but this is not bad in any sense of the word. So just something to consider there. In terms of cards, you draw a lot of cards. You just have a lot of cards. No reason for draws in this deck. So it's crits, and fronts all the way down. Lastly is Cage of the Furious Star. So originally I had this grade 3 that would like get a on play counterblast, get something from soul to hand, or if it's call something from soul to rear guard, and then if it's the same name as your Vanguard, you can put it in your hand, so you can then persona ride it. But very rarely did that come up. I think I would rather have just that this is an order, because the grade 3 that after it did the skill, it never went anywhere. I would often want to call other things over it because they do things like Zamoog, things like the Colossus. So I think this is the more prudent option because A, you get the soul charge out of it. The grade 3 took the card out of the soul and didn't replace it. And then you can just call anything to rear. So yeah, this has definitely been a nice order since I've put it in. So that is the Quagmire deck. Yes, I'm saying that. Leave a like, leave a comment, tell your friends if you have any suggestions for the deck. How's it working for you? All that's below. Patreon.com/Nexus at night. Thanks everyone. Bye.